Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
Hey everybody, Vivian here. This is actually Diary of a Director, Volume 00. We're starting our series with a movie review, believe it or not. Mostly, if you haven't noticed, because I watched Captain America Civil War. So I'm representing Tony on the surface here, my Iron Man card, but I've also got my Cap colors on too, because it's kind of a toss-up between them. At least it was at the beginning of this movie. Also, to preface this, just so you guys know, this is going to be full of spoilers. So if you haven't seen the film yet, please God, go see the film, turn this off, go see the film, and come back. And then you can watch this. The other thing that you should probably know is that I've already kind of got a little bit of a bias. It is my opinion, and I'm also a big comic book geek, so you'll hear a lot of that in my opinion and how I perceive the film. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about Captain America Civil War. Now, a lot of my friends actually saw this film before I did. I didn't get a chance to see it till a couple days after it came out, and one of the things that everybody told me is that it's not that great. And if you compare it to Winter Soldier, it really kind of isn't. But if you sit down and you watch it for what it is a very fun ride. It was directed by the Russo brothers, and something that I really loved about their work, because they also did Captain America Winter Soldier, is their combat scenes are always really on point. They actually have some of the strongest combat scenes I've seen in film so far, and I've really enjoyed watching them. How they're shot and how they're choreographed is done very well, in my personal opinion. One of the things that I really enjoyed about Captain America Civil War, especially being a comic book nerd that I am, there were a couple of comic book throwbacks. If anyone remembers Captain America's River of Truth speech, that was actually in the film. Sharon Carter's line is basically it's basically that speech, but without without the whole River of Truth thing, and I get why they did that, but it was kind of epic to hear it actually being said. The other comic book scene that's actually in there is the near death of Tony Stark, which was kind of awesome. How Captain America didn't really kill him, but almost took off his head in the process, which is really cool. Like I said, the combat scenes are very on point. The airport scene in particular was a strong one, between, the warring factions, as it were. And there were some characters that really had a lot of depth to them that I really loved seeing. Black Panther wound up being one of my favorites because of that depth. You got to know him a little bit. I ended up really liking him, which is the point. That's why you build that backstory. This was also the first time that I've actually encountered a Spider-Man in film that I've liked. Believe it or not, I have not encountered a Spider-Man that I've liked up to this point. Even Andrew Garfield, who I love as an actor, his Spider-Man I didn't hate, but I didn't really like him either. Tom Holland's Spider-Man was literally sold it. He had me as soon as he made the Star Wars reference, because he makes an at reference for my Star Wars nerds out there. And I pretty much went, that's my Spider-Man. Done. Problem solved. Sold. First time I've ever liked Spider-Man. The other thing that I don't think the other Spider-Man's films ever really showed is they didn't really show the extent of Peter Parker's powers. They weren't very well illustrated. He's not exactly, he is, but he isn't a web-slinging acrobat type. I mean, those are just kind of his primary means, and probably the showiest means of him getting around. But he also has the strength of a spider, and he has the spider senses as well. And those are actually very well illustrated, in my opinion, in Civil War, because you see his immense strength, which they highlighted, and you also do see his spider senses, but in a much more natural way and less of a otherworldly psychic way, which is the way it's been portrayed in the past. And I liked that. I liked it being a more natural sort of, oh crap, I saw that coming, more than mindgasm type of deal. Marissa Tomei's Aunt May, let's just say when I went to see this with my friend Adolfo, he was very attracted to Aunt May, far more than he probably should have been, because Marissa Tomei is a very beautiful lady. The other characters I thought were very well developed were actually Wanda and Vision. Wanda and Vision, when she's in solitary confinement, because that's what it was, they have a very interesting sort of dialogue where they're sort of becoming friends, and Vision is sort of becoming attached to her because, you know, if you read the comics, you know that eventually they wind up kind of having a thing, you know, and then a marriage, and then some kids that do and don't exist. But, you know, whatever, read the comics. But yeah, it was a very interesting sort of development point between the two of them as well. And the last character that I thought was probably the best developed, or at least another one of those that falls into the very well developed category, was Cap himself. Not only did I enjoy the performance, but I also enjoyed that sort of internal dialogue that Cap had with himself, which, I mean, maybe it was just me, maybe I just got it more than most people, but I could understand him trying to empathize and understand Tony's point of view, but at the end of the day not really being able to reconcile it with his point of view and what he felt was the right thing to do, and following his heart and what he felt needed to be done, you know. And also there's the whole loyalty to his friend thing. If you were talking to me before this, you know that I had actually nicknamed this film based on the trailer Saving Private Bucky, for a reason, because it is kind of about Bucky, but when I actually saw the film, it wasn't as much about Bucky as I thought it was gonna be. So those are basically some of the things that I really liked, and overall it was a fun ride, but there were a couple things that maybe didn't work so well. Let's talk about how apparently no one thinks the audience can read or knows the difference between Berlin, Germany, and Berlin, Tunisia, because they have giant white letters that denote every place they go to, except, for some reason, Wakanda, because they assume we're not that dumb. Thank God. Other than that, we have the IQ of Mayo. Great. So that was something that really annoyed me. Like, 2 seconds from the get-go, and then when we got to Lagos, Adolfo was like, I'm gonna kill someone. So that was number one. Number two, Crossbones. I literally missed Crossbones. No joke. I was like, wait, Crossbones happened? When? What the hell? If you weren't, you literally, they just kind of hashed over it. It was like, and he was there, and now he's gone. Which sucks because Crossbones is he's kind of more important than that, at least in my opinion. Damn. And the other thing that I also got really bothered by is I like a villain that, like, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with. You like to hate them kind of a thing. I never got attached to Zemo. Zemo meant nothing to me. And it was mostly because so much time was spent on his actions and not really enough time was spent getting to know the person. And maybe there was a point to that. Maybe you weren't really supposed to get attached to him. I'm not sure. I just know that when he finally had his exposition and he talked about why he was doing what he was doing, it was like, hey, so this means nothing. This is kind of like a throwaway because I officially don't care about you by this point. You know, and it kind of sucks because T'Challa has this amazing moment where he decides not to give in to his vengeance, and he makes this decision based on that choice, and it's like his development as a character is great, but not having that sort of depth to Zemo cheapened that decision and didn't make it mean as much, at least to me. So hey, that was kind of how I felt about the whole villain thing. I mean, it's not that he wasn't, like, I get why, like, cognitively it's there. Yes, he made the choice because X, Y, and Z happened. It makes sense, but there was no emotional attachment to that. So honestly, like, T'Challa could have thrown him off a cliff and I wouldn't have given two shits. I mean, and there were a lot of other subtext in there that I think they didn't really bring into play after Age of Ultron, which they could have, since they decided to involve all the Avengers in this movie, as well as Ant-Man. Let's talk about Ant-Man for a minute. So how about Ant-Man got, like, no screen time whatsoever? The scenes that he was in were great. They were awesome. They were super. I would have put Ant-Man on my list of characters that I liked had I had more screen time with him. But I just don't think he had enough, you know, and that makes me sad because I think that that was one of the tragic losses of this film, was not enough Ant-Man / Giant Man, whatever you want to call him at this point. And the other thing is, with Age of Ultron, you had this whole character development point for Tony, where you sort of started talking about his fear and how his fear actually created Ultron. And that's what happened. That Wanda playing on his fear was actually how he created Ultron, and that this fear of encountering some insurmountable foe is what keeps Tony building these machines, and what ultimately leads to the destruction of his relationship with Pepper, because he can't stop. And I was like, that's a great character development point. It's a real shame we glossed over it in this film, because it was literally like, and we're there and it's gone. Okay, thanks, bye. And the other sad part about Tony's story too is I kind of felt like he was very two-dimensional and single-minded. Like, I didn't feel like there was any depth to his actions aside from being, you know, classic Tony Stark, which is sad because before I felt like there was more to him. But maybe it was just because it was more of a Cap story and not as much of an Iron Man story. Hey, I'll give him that. Whatever, that's fine. I do think that this movie left me looking forward to the Black Panther film coming in 2017 because like I said, I really enjoyed T'Challa. I'm looking forward to seeing more with him. And for the first time ever in the history of any of the Spider-Man films, I'm actually looking forward to Spider-Man Homecoming. I'm looking forward to seeing more of Tom Holland and apparently Tony Stark being more of a dick than he already is. So hey, tell me if you missed anything. Let me know if you agree or disagree, or feel free to share your opinion in a civil way, of course. After all, I'd hate to start a war. Let me know in the comments below. So have a great one.